welcome back to another review. So it's just me this time. We said we were going to try and do something a little bit different for the Obi-Wan Kenobi reviews, for the episode reviews, which, welcome to the review for the first two episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. But, me and Logan recorded the review last night. We tried doing it over like a Discord call, but it ended up pretty much just being a train wreck on my end. The audio was too quiet, and it was just, there were parts I had to trim out, and I just could not, I didn't have any editing software prepared on it. So, I figured just for most of the episode reviews, it'll probably just be me, and then the final episode review, it'll be with me, Jonah, and Logan, so we can give our overall thoughts on it. But, to kind of sum up Logan's thoughts, he's really loving the show so far. He pretty much has the exact same thoughts as me for the first two episodes. But, yeah, so we'll start off with episode 1. I'm really, really liking the show start so far. And episode 1, I love because it's exactly what I wanted. I went into episode 1 and I was just like, okay, I want a slower paced episode. I do not want it to be fast paced in any way. Give us a slower start to the show and primarily focus on what Obi-Wan has been up to. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. Now granted, there are a couple of other aspects to it, like we spend a little bit of time with the Inquisitors, which we'll get to. And we spend also a good chunk of our time with a character that I did not expect to be in the episode at all, with young Leia, which I thought was really, it makes sense why she's in the show, because of the fact that, you know, and there's kind of like this kind of like a plot hole in A New Hope, just like, oh, how does Leia know Obi-Wan? We never figured that out. This show gives us that the reasoning as to how she knows him, which I think is really, really cool. Also, Leia's child actor or actress is one of the best child actors that I have seen in a long time. She is doing fantastic. I'm loving her so far. Now granted, I feel like there are parts of episode 1 that maybe focus on her a little too much for an Obi-Wan Kenobi show. I can understand people already having complaints about that, but at the same time, I think it's good, so I honestly don't mind it, and it feels like they're still spending, especially in episode 2, it feels like they're still doing a good job of spending enough time on Obi-Wan, because in episode 1, it's just his life on Tatooine. So, and they spend enough time with Leia to kind of like build her up a little bit in terms of like how she is as a child, and, you know, the reasoning for why Obi-Wan ends up coming out of hiding. Well, not really come out of hiding, but like actually leaving Tatooine. Because he had been on them for 10 years and he had cut himself off from the Force. And we really see in episode 1 just how broken he is, because he's having nightmares about all the stuff that happened during the war with losing Padme, and especially losing Anakin. And it's just so... And speaking of that, with the beginning of episode 1 where we have the flashback to pretty much the summary of the prequels was so awesome to see. And now granted, it hasn't been that long since I've seen them, but seeing those, I was just like, before the episode started, I was like, oh, if we get a recap of Revenge of the Sith or something like that, I'm gonna lose it. And then we got a recap of all the prequels, and I was like, this is even better. But yeah, I really did enjoy episode 1 because it's exactly what I wanted. It was a slower paced episode, not a lot happening, and I can understand people's complaints with the episode, but none of them really bothered me except for two things. The chase scene in the woods wasn't good, and I'm also just like, Leia's a 10-year-old kid, and these bounty hunters are having trouble catching up to her. And normally I could excuse stuff like that, but that case, just like, they could have genuinely caught up with her. And there was one scene where, now granted, she did have one scene where she like slid down like a tiny little hill, and I was just like, Okay, because normally she would like when you think like kids sliding down, they would normally just like kind of slide down, kind of slap away. She slid down like a pro. I was like, all right. But there was other scenes where it's like she ducks under a branch and the bounty hunter is like close behind her and he keeps running and like the branch is in full view of him. He should be able to see it and I'm sure he does see it. He just keeps running and then he just kind of runs into it. I was like, what? I'm like, that's weird. So yeah, that was bad. And but that was honestly the only really major big problem I had with at least episode one, because episode one does introduce the Inquisitors and Riva. I do understand everybody's complaints about it, but I swear I'm already so tired of all the hate that the show is getting because I'm just like, people were hating on this character, just like, oh, why is she doing this? Why is she doing that? I'm like, you guys do realize the show is not over yet. We have only got 2 episodes out, and you're hating this character like, just like, oh, we don't know anything about it. Because it's episode 2. It's 2 episodes. Why are you saying you're hating her because you don't know enough about her? Like, if we are in the final episode and that didn't happen, yeah, then yes, that is a valid reason. But it's episode 2. So granted, I think she's, like, to me it's like, I find a character kind of annoying and she's like tolerable at best. But the thing is, I'm not going to say I hate the character because she still hasn't had time to be fully developed. And I have hopes that she could be developed in pretty cool ways. But at the moment, we can't really say anything certain about the character because we know that she has some sort of vendetta against Kenobi. But that's about it, and the fact that none of the other Inquisitors like her. So I do hope they give a valid reason as to that, because she seems to know a lot, which there's a lot of rumors going on about that, but I'm not really going to go as much into that. But she seems to know a lot, especially in episode 2. But yeah, so speaking of that, so episode 2. I personally enjoyed this episode a little bit more than episode 1, and I already loved episode 1. But I think this episode did a pretty good job of focusing a lot more on Kenobi, even though the first episode did what it was supposed to, and just focusing bits on Obi-Wan and then enough on Leia. But I think this episode was just a lot more fun because we got a lot more Kenobi. We got now pretty much most of the episode was just Obi-Wan tracking down Leia, and then them kind of bonding a little bit, but not a whole lot. I love the fact that we see a clone trooper. I did not expect that at all. I, for a split second, thought that was Captain Rex from the Clone Wars, and I was like, if he shows up in the show, I'm gonna lose it. I'm finally watching the rest of that show, and it's just as good as where I left it. But yeah, it's just most of the episode is just Obi-Wan finding Leia, and them sort of again bonding a little bit. And there's another chase scene where Leia's running away from him, but I personally didn't mind this chase scene as much because it made sense why Obi-Wan wasn't catching up to her quickly enough, because of the fact that he's getting caught up with so many other like bounty hunters that are currently after him. And while I thought it was annoying at first how Leia just kind of ran away from him, just like, oh, you're not, it's like, oh, I bet you're not actually a Jedi, even before that, she did have some moments where she was kind of like, really? But thinking about it more, I personally thought it made a little bit of sense, because in terms of her running away, when you're looking at it from her perspective, somebody who she does not know at all has come to, quote-unquote, save her, and then you see that multiple bounty hunters are after him. So, to me, it does make a little bit of sense. And he's done nothing to prove that he is a Jedi as well, aside from just having a lightsaber, which does not automatically prove you're a Jedi. So, or at least in those times. But, so I personally thought it made sense why she was running away, and then Now, granted, when she jumped off the edge of the building, I was like, what'd you expect to happen? Like, did you think you were just gonna magically jump to the other side? You're a kid. Your legs are maybe like this big. But see, I wasn't sure how I felt about that. But that scene did give us a cool moment of Obi-Wan tapping into the Force again, because he had cut himself off. So it was so cool seeing him just tap into it again and have this really great moment of saving her, and then have Leia go, "Oh, you were telling the truth." But yeah, so that was really cool. We see that the bounty hunters that captured Leia were hired by Reva because Reva really wants Obi-Wan, and it has all the other Inquisitors, like the Grand Inquisitor, not too thrilled with her. And then we get towards the end of the episode where Reva is hunting down Obi-Wan, and the Grand Inquisitor comes in, and Reva kills the Grand Inquisitor. This moment, honestly, okay, I do not hate this scene as much as everybody else does, because everywhere I've seen, everywhere's like, oh, this scene is terrible, because it's just all that stuff, because the Star Wars community is one of the most toxic communities I've ever seen. And it's just like, it's terrible, but I don't want to get into that complaint, or rant right now. But it mostly just had me confused, because I was like, okay, I have not seen Star Wars Rebels, but I know for a fact that he's basically the main villain in the first season. So I'm sort of interested to see what kind of explanation they give later on in the show, because he's not dead, and he can't be dead, because otherwise that retcons all of Rebels. And you can't exactly retcon an entire show that even has strong connections to a show like The Mandalorian. You can't exactly retcon it. So, yeah, I don't know whether they'll pull like a clone, like some sort of clone, or maybe he like actually comes back or something like that. We'll just have to see. But to me, it's just, I was just like, there's no way he's dead, because he's in a later show where he actually dies. I don't know. We'll see. But the scene right before that, when Reva tells Obi-Wan that Anakin was alive, and just the fear and the emotion in Ewan McGregor's face, I'm just like, this man is selling it. And it's, you could really feel it, because it makes, okay, again, these are all my opinions. If you all feel differently about the show and you like hate it, that's totally fine, and feel free to let me know why down below. Just, one, please respect my opinion, because again, with the Star Wars community, just respect that I'm really liking the show, and like, if I like something that you don't, please respect that. I shouldn't have to say that, but with the Star Wars community especially, I really have to stress that, and I hate doing that. But to me, it makes sense that Obi-Wan wouldn't know, and this is also coming from somebody who has not read a whole bunch of the comics as well. So, because I'm mostly just going off like some shows and movies, and even a couple of comics here and there, but I'm mostly going off of that knowledge. But to me, it made sense why Obi-Wan did not know that Vader was alive, because he's been on Tatooine ever since the end of Revenge of the Sith, and it's an outer rim planet, like they say earlier on the show. It's like the Empire really has no control over that planet. So, to me, it makes sense, because like, with it being an outer rim planet, and he purposely cut himself off from the Force, so he's not gonna know as much about it. So, to me, it made sense how Obi-Wan would just now be figuring out that Vader is alive. And having the final shot of the episode where Obi-Wan's just sitting there just like, says Anakin, then we cut to Hayden Christensen in his little like back to tank, hearing the breathing, and I was like, it is so, now granted, it's maybe not like super noticeably to be him, but it is him, because he was credited in the episode, because I don't think he wasn't credited in episode 1. But it's been too long since we saw Hayden Christensen, and it's so fantastic to see him again. And I cannot wait until, I'm hoping this happens at the end of the show, because if it happens in the earlier, it's not going to be as good. I cannot wait till later in the show where we get an Obi-Wan and Vader rematch. Because, and I want to talk about this right now. A lot of people are saying that it's like, oh, them me beforehand would retcon A New Hope. I'm like, not really when you think about it. Because in A New Hope, all Vader says is, when I left you, I was but the learner. Now I'm the master. He's not meaning the last time he saw him. He's just saying when he left him, which is basically meaning when Anakin became Vader, he was still a learner, whether he wanted to admit it or not. And now he's saying now he is the master. He's not necessarily like saying that the last time he saw him was in Revenge of the Sith. He's just talking about when he left him. And I think that personally works to have them meet in between Revenge of the Sith and The New Hope. Because it wouldn't be retconning either of that. But I cannot wait till later in the show to be able to see their reunion and seeing what other kind of surprises were in store. But overall, I think this is a great start to the show so far. It does have its problems, don't get me wrong, but I am loving it regardless. I cannot wait for more episodes to come out, and I am just so excited to see more of Vader, and I am intrigued by what kind of development they could give to Reva. But again, we'll just have to see. It's not right to hate her character after 2 episodes, saying that, like, hating her like she has a full character arc when she doesn't. So yeah, there's that. But please let me know what you guys thought of the first 2 episodes down below, and be sure to stay tuned for in a couple of days where we get my episode 3 review. There's not going to be really any other reviews in between because there's really no other big movies that I'm wanting to review in between then. Because right as I finish up Obi-Wan, then after that will be Thor: Love and Thunder. But yeah, so let me know what you thought of the first 2 episodes of Obi-Wan. Are you loving it? Are you hating it? Are you kind of in the middle? Please feel free to let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But that's going to do it for me. See you guys next time for the episode 3 review. See y'all later, webheads.